The late summer sun of 1887 baked the barren land of New Mexico. The town of Dust Hollow was so small that it was barely recognizable on a map. There was only a grocery store, a rickety saloon, and an old wooden train station covered in thick dust. That afternoon, the red sun beat down on the platform, the heat almost burning the air. The iron wheels squealed. The train belched a white plume of steam before stopping. The car door opened, and Elena Hartfield stepped out. She wore a dark blue dress that was frayed at the hem but still exuded the elegance of an Eastern woman. Her black boots were still dusty, and she held a small suitcase. Her eyes were slightly confused as she looked around. The train station was deserted. No one was waiting for her, as the letter had promised. Elena clutched the old paper in her purse, the letter that had led her halfway across the country. The ink was smeared by the rain. The name of the town, Creekstone, was now blurred like an ink stain, and it was this blurriness that had brought her here. She sighed silently, thinking that perhaps she had made a mistake. But before she could turn around and head back to the ship, a childish scream rang out from behind her. "Mama!" Two small arms hugged her waist tightly. Elena was startled, bent down and saw a little girl about 7 years old. Her honey blonde hair was messy. Her blue eyes were sparkling with tears. The girl looked up, her voice trembling and full of hope. "Papa, God finally answered us. He sent Mama back." Elena's heart stopped. She had never heard anything so shocking. The small hands clutched her skirt tightly as if afraid she would disappear. For a moment, Elena felt the warmth, the heartbeat, the desperation of the child. A feeling she had never thought she would experience on this trip. A man's voice rang out, urgent but deep. "Olivia!" The man appeared from the end of the platform, tall, broad-shouldered, with a sunburnt face and cold gray eyes. Road dust clung to his boots and faded coarse shirt. He stopped when he saw Elena, his look momentarily startled but quickly turned to wariness. He bent down, gently but firmly separating his daughter from her. "I'm sorry, miss." His voice was hoarse and dry as the desert wind. "She sometimes makes mistakes. She misses her mother so much." Elena stood still, the girl still clinging to her hand, her eyes brimming with tears. "Papa, she is Mama. Look at her." The man took a deep breath, looked up at Elena. Their eyes met for a moment. Elena shivered. In those eyes she saw a hidden pain, a doubt, but also a sparkle of something she couldn't name. He nodded slightly. "I'm Cole Granger. This is my daughter Olivia. And you?" Elena hesitated, her lips dry. "Elena Hartfield. I think I got off at the wrong station." Cole frowned. "Where are you going?" "Creekstone. I was promised someone would pick me up there." But she pulled out the crumpled letter. "The writing is all smudged, the map is torn. I'm not sure." Cole glanced at it, then shook his head. "There's no town called Creekstone around here. There's just Dust Hollow, and this is it." Elena froze. Lost. Nowhere to go, no one waiting. The station was emptying. The train was about to leave again. In that felt the world collapse. Olivia still held her hand, whispering, "Mama, don't leave me." Elena's heart ached. Cole looked at her, his expression torn between wariness and compassion. Finally he sighed, scratching the back of his neck. "There's no hotel here. It's getting dark, the road is dangerous. My house is half a mile away, sheltered with a bed. You can stay here if you want." Elena hesitated, but looking at the red light about to set, looking at Olivia clinging tightly, she knew she had no choice. "Thank you. I would appreciate it," she whispered. Olivia cheered softly, holding her hand tightly. Cole just nodded slightly, his eyes unreadable. They left the train station, the three figures gradually disappearing behind the red dust, and the train continued to whistle and leave the station. Elena had not arrived at the appointed place. But in that moment, she entered a story that was not in any letter. The story of fate. The first morning in Dust Hollow was strangely quiet. The thin sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the simple wooden kitchen. The smell of weak coffee wafted through the air, mixed with the rustic sound of a knife cutting cornbread. Elena sat in an old chair, her hands holding a chipped ceramic cup. Her eyes glanced around, both unfamiliar and confused. She had barely slept last night, Her thoughts were racing. Where am I? Where am I going next? Is there someone out there waiting for me? She had been sure this trip was a new beginning, but now, between the barren land and the rustic house, everything was uncertain. Olivia's giggle broke the silence. She sat at the table, her mouth full of butter, her eyes shining like stars as she looked at Elena. "You burn bread better than anyone else here," Olivia whispered, like a secret between them. Elena chuckled softly, her heart softening. It had been a long time since she had seen such innocent and needy eyes. Out in the yard, the rhythmic sound of chopping wood rang out. Catch, catch. Cole Granger, his shirt faded, his shoulders broad and strong, each axe swing decisively as if to relieve sadness and to build a constant rhythm of life. Elena stepped out onto the porch, hesitantly saying, "Do you need any help?" Cole looked up, sweat running down his tan cheeks. He quickly wiped it with his strong arm, then shook his head. "You're a guest. A guest doesn't have to do anything." Elena tugged at the hem of her skirt. "I don't want to be just a guest, Swo. I want to be useful." Cole's eyes paused, examining. Then he pointed to the basket of apples by the door. "Olivia is going to bake this afternoon. She's clumsy. If you could peel apples, that would be a big help." A small smile appeared on Elena's lips. "Then let me try." That afternoon, in the small kitchen, Elena peeled an apple. Olivia sat next to her, watching and secretly eating pieces. Cole sat not far away, adjusting the reins, occasionally glancing over. No one spoke much, but the silence was not uncomfortable. When the fire in the stove cast a shimmering shadow, Cole spoke, his voice hoarse. "I was in the army. 3 years, blood and smoke. When I came back, I had this land. I married Lily, and," he paused, his throat choking, "she died giving birth to Olivia. I raised her alone since then." Elena put down the knife, looked at him for a long time. "You have suffered a lot of loss." Cole nodded slightly, his eyes distant. "Olivia never stopped praying every night. She told me there would be a new mother. I didn't dare believe it. I also thought about writing a letter to order a wife through the newspaper, but..." He clenched his rough hands. "I never send it. I'm afraid, not for myself, but for her. Afraid that she'll hope and then be disappointed again." Elena's heart ached as she listened. She suddenly recognized the pieces of this strange picture. The smudged letter, the missed train, the wrong town name. Perhaps none of it was accidental. She spoke softly but firmly. "I don't want to live like a commodity either. In Boston, my mother arranged a marriage for me with a man 20 years older than me, just for wealth. I ran away. I chose to write my own letters, chose a future, even if it wasn't certain, as long as it was my own to decide." Cole looked at her, silent for a long time. Then he sighed heavily, as if releasing part of the burden. "Maybe Dust Hollow wasn't where you were going, but the train's gone now. Before it comes back, I want to make a proposal." Elena looked up, her brown eyes sparkling in the oil lamplight. "Propose what?" Cole stepped closer. Not too close, but close enough for his breath to mix with the air she breathed. He spoke slowly, clearly, each word. "Stay here. Not as a guest, not as a temporary stay. Stay as part of this house, as a mother to Olivia." Elena's heart raced. The offer was both a salvation and a storm. A blunt, gruff man, but his eyes held a rare sincerity. A child who saw her as a wish to be answered. And a heart, her heart, that was slowly trembling, wanting to believe that it had found the right place to belong. She didn't answer right away. She just gently placed her hand on the wooden table, where the firelight shone, her voice whispering like the wind. "Maybe I got off at the right station. I just didn't realize it." Dawn in Dust Hollow was never gentle. The grumpy roosters echoed across the fields. The wind whistled through the cracks in the door, and the smell of kitchen smoke mixed with the smell of hay. Elena woke with a start, her thick woolen blanket smelling of wood ash. She had had trouble sleeping last night, tired from work and troubled by her own whispers of doubt. She was a Boston cloth merchant's daughter, accustomed to a breakfast laid out for her, a room cleaned by a maid. At the Granger Ranch, she had nothing but her own hands. The first morning, she struggled with the damp wood, struggling to get the fire started. When she drew water from the well, the rough rope bit into her skin, making her delicate hands bleed. Cole came in from outside, saw the scene, and quickly grabbed the rope. "You don't have to do this. It's not for you," he said curtly, his voice as hard as wood. Elena gritted her teeth, her eyes burning. "I don't want to just stand by and watch. If I'm here, I have to be useful." Cole was stunned. For the first time, he saw in that woman's eyes not only fragility, but also a fire. He nodded slightly, not saying more. From that day on, he started to let her do the work. Draw water, light the fire, take care of the horses, herd the cows. But the real difficulty did not only come from the work. One afternoon, Elena and Olivia brought eggs to the market to exchange for salt. As soon as she got off, she felt the scrutiny from everywhere. A fat woman folded her arms across her chest, jerked her chin. "Here comes the city girl. With such shiny dresses, you want to live at the ranch? Bet you'll run away before winter." Another guy added, his voice slurred, "I heard you got off at the wrong station. Maybe you're pretending to find a place to cling to. The Granger Ranch is not a place for everyone to rely on." A sneer rang out, like needles piercing her chest. Elena lowered her head, holding Olivia's hand tightly. The little girl felt it too, clinging to her, whispering, "Don't be sad, Mama. I don't believe them. I know God sent you to us." Elena smiled awkwardly, but her eyes stung. She wasn't afraid of hard work, but the scornful words were like a knife cutting into the fragile faith she was building. That night in the smoky kitchen, Elena sewed Olivia's shirt. Each stitch was a way for her to reassure herself, "I have to prove them wrong." Cole sat at the table, fixing the reins. The flickering firelight illuminated his angular face, his eyes still quietly observing. He spoke hoarsely. "I heard what they said in the market. People here are used to seeing strangers come and go. They don't trust anyone patient enough to stay." Elena looked up, her brown eyes shining in the firelight. "What about you? Do you believe it?" Cole was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "I want to believe, but I'm afraid. Afraid that one day you'll leave, leaving Olivia with a bigger void than before." Elena put down the needle and stepped closer. The distance between them was only a breath. She whispered, "If I leave, it won't be because I want to, only because I'm forced to. But right now, I'm here, and I want to stay." Cole's eyes wavered for a moment. He wanted to reach out, to touch, but he clenched his hand as if to imprison himself. In that moment, Elena understood. Feelings had been kindled, but his fear was still greater than his desire. The next day, another challenge came. Suddenly, dark clouds gathered, the rain poured down. The cows panicked and scattered. Cole rushed into the yard, and Elena hurried after him. She waded through the mud, her skirt entangled, pushing and waving, helping to herd the cows back to the barn. She slipped and fell into the mud. Cole immediately rushed forward and pulled her up. They were both soaked, their breaths mixed in the pouring rain. For a moment, Elena felt the protection in those strong arms. Her heart pounded. Cole also paused longer than necessary, then let go, turning away. "You shouldn't put yourself in danger," he said hoarsely. Elena laughed tiredly, mud smeared on her cheeks, but her voice was firm. "This is my home. I will do anything to protect it." Cole paused. The word "my home" sounded like a promise. In his heart, the fence that had been so strong for so many years shook, but it had not yet collapsed completely. That night, Elena sat by the window, watching the moon dim behind the clouds. She remembered Boston, the lavish parties, the flowing dresses, the sound of violins, but it was all just an empty shell. Here, despite the hardship, each axe swing, each firewood fire, each smile from Olivia made her feel at peace. However, doubt still lingered. Would Cole ever open up completely? Or would she always be a temporary person in this house? The next morning, the test continued in another way. Elena went with Cole to the fields to check the fence. A local man, Jacob, who was known for his foul mouth, came over and sneered, "Look, Mr. Granger has finally found someone to replace Lily. But I bet she'll be back in town soon. That kind of girl can't stand the desert wind." Elena froze, but before she could speak, Cole took a step forward, his voice sharp. "Enough, Jacob. She doesn't need your judgment." Jacob sneered and walked away, leaving a tense silence. Elena glanced at Cole, her heart filled with a strange feeling, protected but also burdened, because she feared her very presence would bring him to confront the whole town. That night, Elena sat by the stove, Olivia's head on her shoulder, fast asleep. Cole walked in, watching the scene for a long time. In his eyes was a struggle, the desire to have a complete family and the fear of losing again. Elena whispered softly, as if talking to herself, "Maybe the challenge isn't the job, it isn't the gossip out there. The real challenge is making you believe that I won't abandon you and your father, and making myself believe that this is where I belong." Outside, the desert wind blew through the wooden posts, whistling persistently. But in that house, between the warm fire and smoldering suspicion, the seed of love still quietly took root. The first rain of the season swept through Dust Hollow, leaving behind a damp, earthy scent, mixed with the scent of hay around the ranch. The minimalist cabin, which had been cold, was now filled with Olivia's giggles and the warm breath of new life. That night, the wind blew through the window, the fire was red, small ashes glittering in the air. Elena sat on the chair, Olivia curled up in her arms, her eyes half closed as she listened to her softly sing a lullaby. Her voice was not smooth, but full of tenderness. Cole stood on the porch, quietly leaning against the doorframe. The light reflected on his tanned face, his gray eyes trembling slightly. When Olivia fell asleep, Elena pulled the covers up, kissed her honey-blonde hair, and stood up. Turning around, she was startled to see Cole watching. He quickly turned away, clearing his throat. "She sleeps better since you came." Elena smiled, her voice low but warm. "Not just her. I also find myself sleeping better. In Boston, I never had this peace." The silence stretched. Cole walked in, sat down on a chair by the fire, his calloused hands rubbing lightly together. Elena sat down opposite. Between them, the firelight flickered, illuminating the tired lines and old wounds. "Do you miss home?" Cole asked hoarsely. Elena thought for a moment. "I used to think I did, but when I left, I realized what I left behind was not home, but a golden cage. Here, I can truly breathe." Cole looked at her longer, his gray eyes shining in the firelight. For a moment, Elena saw the longing in them, something he always tried to hide. The next day, the weather was unexpectedly cold. Elena was carrying water when a strong wind blew through, making her thin dress cling to her body, the hem slipping off her shoulders. She was pulling frantically when Cole came from afar, grabbed the bucket, his voice rough but warm. "Let me." Elena was about to protest, but when his hand gently touched hers to pull the rope, her heart pounded. His skin was hot, strong, unlike her smoothness. At that moment, they both froze. "You don't always have to do it for me," she whispered, her breath trembling. Cole looked deep into her eyes, his voice low. "Here, no one has to suffer alone." They stood so close, their breaths mingled, their hearts beating fast in the vast silence of the meadow. But then Cole turned away, continuing to pull the bucket, as if afraid that one more step would break it all. Elena watched, her lips trembling, both regretful and warm. Another night, Olivia pleaded, "Mama, braid my hair." Elena smiled, sitting down on the chair, the little girl sitting on her lap. Her hands slowly ran through her curly blonde hair, braiding it and humming softly. Cole sat in the corner, pretending to read the newspaper, but his eyes never left the scene. The oil lamplight fell on Elena's face, making her skin shine, her soft shoulders exposed under her thin dress. Cole's heart pounded. A familiar yet distant feeling arose, a memory of tenderness he thought he had lost forever. When Olivia fell asleep, Cole approached, gently lifted her from Elena's lap and placed her on the bed. When he bent down, his hand brushed lightly over her arm. She looked up, her eyes met his. There were no words, but that look was enough to make Elena shiver. The moonlit night, Elena went out onto the porch, breathing in the cool breeze after a long day. The sound of the wind rustling in the meadow, the smell of dry earth, everything seemed to sing its own song. Cole stepped out, arms folded against the wooden pillar. They both silently watched the sky. Then he suddenly spoke. "Lily, my wife, she used to sit here too, singing lullabies to her every night." He paused, his voice choking. "I thought no one would do that again." Elena turned, her hand gently touching his arm. You don't have to forget to start over. Just have the courage to let your heart warm again. Cole looked at her, the moonlight reflecting in his gray eyes. He reached out, slowly brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. In that moment, Elena felt her whole body tremble. So close that with just a small step, their lips would touch. But he stopped, took a deep breath, then turned away, his voice low. I wasn't ready. Elena bit her lip, her heart both aching and pounding. She didn't blame him, because in that restraint, she knew he was fighting the fear of loss, and love, though unspoken, had quietly sprouted. The night gradually passed, leaving only the sound of the wind and the breathing of the two people under the porch. No need for promises, no need for noise. It was the silence that created the most intimate moment, the moment their hearts found each other. In the late summer afternoon, the sky over Dust Hollow was red like a giant fire. Elena had just hung the laundry on the line, the wind carrying the scent of dry sunlight and burnt grass. Olivia ran around the yard, laughing as her little dress fluttered. In that moment, Elena felt her heart lighten. She began to believe that, although the path that had led her here was wrong, her heart had chosen the right one. However, peace never lasted long in this harsh land. A luxurious carriage appeared on the dusty road. Sitting in it was Clarissa, Cole's distant cousin, famous in the area for her sharpness and ambition. Her dark purple dress, white gloves, and cold eyes made the air thick. Clarissa stepped down, looked around, and stopped at Elena. Her dark red lips curled up. So this is the lost bride that everyone is talking about? Elena flinched slightly, trying to keep her composure. I'm Elena Hartfield. I'm only here to help until... Until? Clarissa interrupted, her eyes sharp as knives. Until we take over this ranch? Cole stepped out of the house, his voice low. Clarissa, don't exaggerate. She's a guest. A guest? Clarissa laughed coldly. You're forgetful, Cole. The whole town is talking. She's from Boston. No one really knows who she is. I even got letters from the East. She pulled out an envelope and waved it in front of everyone. The paper was yellowed. The writing was clear. A man in Boston claimed Elena had a fiancé, but ran away after he discovered her lie. Elena was stunned. Her eyes widened. Her lips trembled. No, that's not true. I've never been engaged to anyone except the letter I wrote. I don't know who he is. Clarissa glanced at Cole, her voice full of sarcasm. You see? A fugitive from the past. How could you let someone like that touch Olivia? The air was thick, only the wind whistling through the eaves. Cole clenched his fists. In his heart, a fire of doubt flared up, mixed with the old fear, the fear of losing again. Elena looked straight at him, her voice choked. Don't you believe me? Cole opened his mouth, but the words stuck in his throat. He didn't say believe, nor don't believe. The silence was like a knife stabbing deep into Elena's heart. She trembled, stepping back. I understand. I'll leave. Olivia rushed forward, hugging her skirt tightly. Mama, don't go. I know Mama doesn't lie. Elena hugged the little girl to her chest, tears falling down her golden hair. Honey, sometimes adults don't believe what children see, but you have to be strong. Cole stood still, his gray eyes filled with conflict. Clarissa stood beside him, her lips curled up, satisfied as she watched Elena pack up a few things and leave the house. That night, the house was as cold as a tomb. Olivia cried until her voice was hoarse, calling Mama in vain. Cole held her, but his arms were not enough to fill the void. Papa, Olivia choked. If you don't believe Mama, then is God wrong? I prayed. I know he sent her to us. Cole didn't answer. He just held her tighter, but his eyes were lost in the darkness. The next day, Olivia had a high fever. Her face was red, her small body was shaking. Cole frantically boiled water, searched for herbs, but she kept calling in her sleep. Mama, Mama, don't leave me. Clarissa stood outside the door with her arms crossed, her voice cold. It's just a childish fever. It will pass. It's useless for a weak child to put all her trust in a stranger. Cole looked up abruptly, his eyes flashing with anger. Enough, Clarissa. You never cared about her, only this land. But to her, Elena is not a stranger. To her, Elena is her mother. Clarissa paled but still held her head high. Are you going to chase me away? I'm the one who deserves to be with you. What is there to trust in a woman who has lost her train? Cole walked forward, each step heavy, his voice like steel. You're never allowed to call Elena that. You're not my family, and you never will be. Clarissa walked away angrily, leaving the tense atmosphere. Cole turned back, looking at Olivia exhausted on the bed, her small hands tightly clutching the scarf Elena had sewn. In that moment, he understood. The trust was not in the fabricated letters, but in his daughter's eyes. The eyes that had chosen Elena from the very first moment. At night, Cole sat alone on the porch, his hands buried in his hair. The sky was speckled with stars, but inside him was an abyss. He remembered the look in Elena's eyes as she left, both hurt and proud. He remembered the warmth of her lullaby to Olivia, the soft trembling of her hand in his in the rain. He whispered as if confessing to himself, "I let her go because I was afraid." And that fear now was taking away the daughter he loved most. The late afternoon sun burned brightly on the dust-hollow prairie, the wind swirling red dust as if the earth itself were troubled. In the small room, Olivia lay unconscious, her face red, her lips dry and cracked, her hands still clutching the woolen scarf Elena had once sewn. Each of her sobs was like a knife cutting deep into Cole's heart. He had suffered loss before, had buried a wife. But this time, he understood. If he lost Elena, he would lose the fragile hope Olivia prayed for every night. Cole stood up abruptly. Clarissa sat on the porch, arms crossed, her voice cold. "You can't stay weak like this forever. Elena left, and that's a good thing. I'm the one for this ranch. I can take care of you of Olivia." Cole spun around, his gray eyes blazing like hot steel. "You don't understand. Olivia doesn't need a land manager. She needs a mother. And I need Elena." Clarissa was stunned, but quickly broke into a grin. "She's a liar. You still believe it?" "The letter in my hand. A fake," Cole interrupted, his voice sharp. "I looked at the ink again. It's not the original handwriting. You made it up, Clarissa." Clarissa's face changed slightly, then quickly covered it with a sneer. "Whether it's real or not, she's gone. And once she's on the train, you'll never see her again." The words were like the last knife to Cole's chest. Without further ado, he grabbed his hat, tightened his grip on the reins, and galloped off, kicking up red dust behind his hooves. The sound of hooves pounded on the path leading to the station. Cole had only one image in his mind, Elena, her face teary, walking with a small suitcase. He had let her go in silence, and that was the biggest mistake of his life. Dust Hollow Station loomed in the purple twilight. The black iron train whistled as it prepared to leave. Passengers boarded, and Elena stood at the edge of the platform, suitcase in hand, staring blankly at the endless track. Cole leaped from his horse and dashed through the dust. "Elena!" The call echoed across the platform. She turned, startled. For a moment time seemed to stand still. His gray eyes met her brown ones, full of longing, regret, and the fear of losing her forever. Elena shook her head, her voice choked. "You don't believe me. When you needed me most, you were silent. What else can you say?" Cole stepped forward, his hands shaking slightly but his voice steady. "I was wrong. I let fear rule me. But when Olivia called you in her fever, I understood. The faith wasn't in the letters, it was in the heart of a child. It chose you. And so did I." He pulled out the unfinished woolen scarf that Olivia held so tightly from his coat. With it was a tiny wildflower, withered but still purple. "She treasured these. She believed God sent you to us. And I," his voice choked, "I believe it too. Even if you came here by mistake, I know you are the best thing that ever happened to me." Elena trembled, her hands tightening on the handle of her suitcase. Tears welled up, but she hesitated. "Cole, what if one day I leave too? What if you lose me again?" He took a step forward, took her hand, pressed it to his left chest, where his heart was beating strongly. "Then I will let this heart break again. But I would rather be hurt again than live my whole life in emptiness. I need you, Elena Hartfield. Not as a guest, not as a temporary shadow, but as part of this family. The woman I want by my side, the mother Olivia prayed for." The train whistle blew long, the iron wheels began to roll. Elena turned to look at the train, then back at Cole. Her breath caught, her hand trembling as she held the scarf. In that moment she saw clearly. All the hardships, the challenges, the doubts, all had led her to this moment. She dropped her suitcase, stepped back from the edge of the platform. Her sparkling eyes looked straight at him. I used to think I didn't belong anywhere, but here, I found a place to stay. Cole exhaled, his strong shoulders feeling as if 1,000 pounds had been lifted. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if afraid that if he let go, she would be lost forever. The passengers on the train station whispered, some snickered, some looked at him with emotion. But Cole didn't care. In his arms was the whole world. He whispered in her ear, his voice breaking, "You didn't come to the wrong station, Elena. You just came at the right time." Elena pressed her cheek against his chest, listening to his frantic heartbeat. She didn't answer, just let her tears roll down, mixing with his warm breath. The train left, rumbling away. But on the red, dusty platform, a new beginning had just formed. No appointment letter needed, no predetermined fate. Just a heart that dared to keep, a heart that dared to give. Cole looked up, holding her hand tightly, not letting go. The sunset stretched, covering the two figures, a man who had once been closed off, a woman who had once been lost, now finding each other in a fateful moment. The early autumn air in Dust Hollow carried a cool breeze. The sky was deep blue, white clouds drifted lazily, and under the ancient oak tree by the shallow stream, 3 small people stood side by side, as if the whole universe revolved around them that day. There was no priest, no orchestra, and no fancy guests. Cole and Elena's wedding was so simple that only Olivia was the witness. But in the eyes of the 3 people, it was the most sacred beginning. Elena wore a dress made from leftover fabric in the house. The double stitches were lost, the hem was a little crooked. Olivia's small hands had woven the thread herself, sewing each stitch, sometimes clumsily, but full of love. When she put it on, Olivia smiled proudly. "It's not perfect, Mama, but it's your dress." Cole looked at her then, his voice hoarse and trembling. "And because it's mine, it's the most beautiful." In the bright yellow sunlight, Cole held Elena's small hands. The hands that had been shaking now became steady. He looked at her, his voice loud enough for only 3 people to hear. "I can't fix the whole world, but I will fix every crack in your heart if you let me. I don't promise riches, I don't promise easy things, but I promise I will never let you walk alone." Elena choked, her eyes brimming with tears. She softly replied, "I've been to the most luxurious places, but I never felt like I belonged, until I got lost at the wrong station and found my true home in your hearts." Olivia stood beside him, holding a basket of wildflowers picked from the meadow. When her parents held hands, she threw the petals into the air, her eyes sparkling. "So now I have both Papa and Mama," she whispered. "God is never late, he just waits for the right time." Cole pulled Elena and Olivia into his arms, holding them both tightly. The wind blew through the oak trees, scattering shimmering sunlight across them. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder, listening to the strong heartbeat that she now called by a new name: family. There was no wedding music, only laughter, heartbeats, and happiness quietly seeping into each breath. But it was that simplicity that made the ceremony the most complete moment. That day, under the shade of the old oak, a new family was born. Not from letters of promise, but from hands clasped together, from hearts that had been broken, but dared to believe again. Elena Hartfield's story is more than a Wild West romance. It's a journey of a woman who was once considered a lost soul, finally finding family in the most unlikely of places. Elena got off at the wrong station, but it turned out to be the right station of her life. The seemingly disastrous mistake became the turning point that led her to true love. Because sometimes God, or fate, doesn't answer the way we expect, but the way we need. Cole, a man who buried his heart after the pain of losing his wife, learned the lesson. Love isn't about protecting yourself from hurt, it's about daring to open up despite the risks. And Olivia, a small but determined girl, reminds us that pure faith is sometimes more correct than all the adult reasoning. The final message rings clear. True love doesn't come when you arrange all the conditions. It comes when you dare to step out of your comfort zone. Mistakes are not the end, they can be the beginning of something better. A family doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs hearts that choose each other and stay together. And as Olivia says, God is never late. He just chooses the right time to bring us to where we belong.